Was this the week the Prime Minister lost his authority? A seismic U-turn followed by another U-turn. This Prime Minister, who was elected on a massive majority just 11 months ago, he's finding it hard to govern. But how much longer can it last? My name's Tom Harwood and this is GB News Originals. Remember to click that subscribe button to stay absolutely up to date. Otherwise you might miss it if the government just happens to collapse. Now, the Prime Minister has been saying so much recently about the scale of his victory in the last year. Yes, it was July the 4th, 2024, when the country resoundingly, overwhelmingly voted for the Labour Party, at least in the eyes of the Prime Minister. He points to the scale of his victory, a majority of 174 seats. What he rarely speaks of, however, is the slither of the vote that delivered it. Yes, barely over 33%. The lowest share of a vote for any majority-winning party in post-war history. And so, perhaps, that is one of the reasons why this government feels so fragile, that despite its large and broad majority, that broad majority could be very shallow indeed. Yes, more than 120 Labour MPs rebelled on what's known as a reasoned amendment to the benefits bill, the disability benefits bill. And what's a reasoned amendment? It's not just about changing a bit of the legislation. No, a reasoned amendment is the mechanism used in Parliament to tear down that legislation in its entirety, to wipe that bill out. And so the government has been scrambling over the course of the last 48 hours to try and ward off this huge rebellion. But of course, this rebellion comes at a fragile time for the Prime Minister. He seems to have been darting backwards and forwards on all sorts of policies. He U-turned, of course, on the winter fuel allowance. He U-turned too on the idea of having a grooming gangs inquiry. He then U-turned, of course, on this issue we're talking about now, the idea of restricting benefits, disability benefits, or at least the growth in the spend on disability benefits by £5 billion. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the partial U-turn announced by the Prime Minister will knock £3 billion off that hoped-for saving. That's £3 billion that the Chancellor will now have to find. Where on earth will she find that money? It's unlikely, given the rebellions that we've seen in Parliament, to come from spending cuts. It's likely it will now have to come from tax rises. But there's more than that too, because the Prime Minister also, in an interview to The Observer, meant to celebrate a year in office really, look back over the first 12 months as we approach that anniversary of the Prime Minister's historic election win. Well, he performed another U-turn, not on policy, but on rhetoric. Yes, he said he deeply regretted the Islands of Strangers speech he gave just 1 month ago. That was criticised by many people on the backbench of his party as being almost like Enoch Powell in terms of rhetoric. Some went as far as to call it fascistic. Yes, simply because the Prime Minister said we didn't want to deliver an island of strangers where different communities live parallel lives and there is a lack of integration. It speaks volumes that the Prime Minister has had to apologise for making that speech, or at least has felt he has had to. Is this because he lacks the authority that a Prime Minister ordinarily has over their backbenches? Or is it because there is a power struggle at the heart of Number 10?
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying, data brokers often target vulnerable people with high interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
A man called Morgan McSweeney, the mastermind of Labour's election strategy. He turfed out Sue Gray, the former Chief of Staff, around Christmas time. He became Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff and General Guru in Number 10. He's been cited as the man behind a lot of the different strategies that the government has pursued since Christmas, whether it's reducing foreign aid spend to increase on the military, or a tougher rhetorical line on smashing the gangs and indeed stopping the boats. But clearly there is some power struggle going on in Number 10 because the Prime Minister himself has been speaking out against that speech that the Prime Minister himself made. Now, of course, he is unlikely to have written that speech. His speechwriters will have done, no doubt massively influenced by Morgan McSweeney. But now that Keir Starmer is saying publicly to a respected journalist that he regrets making that speech, what does that say about the relationship between the two men at the heart of Number 10? There was a recent book published on the election campaign and first days of Labour in government, and it suggested that Keir Starmer perhaps isn't actually all that in charge at all. No, this book, written by Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogrond, hugely respected journalists at the Times, this book suggested that actually Morgan McSweeney was the one pulling all the levers, pressing all the buttons, pulling those strings, and that McSweeney and a small group around him have indeed convinced Keir Starmer that he's driving the train, when in fact he is doing no such thing. Indeed, the book went far as to cite one metaphor, referring to the Docklands Light Railway, a driverless train throughout the east of London. Yes, the book said that Keir Starmer has been plonked in the front of the DLR. He thinks he's driving the train, but he's not really. Now, that might have got to the Prime Minister, and indeed all of those different metaphors that have been used around the Prime Minister, his authority or his decision-making capability, well, they have come back to bite. It is utterly extraordinary that a party that was elected on such a large majority, 174-seat majority, elected on the 4th of July 2024, the fact that they cannot pass policy, even relatively modest policy reform to the ballooning benefits bill, that is a shocking sign of a lack of authority. In some ways, this parliament now feels like it's a hung parliament, like the government has no majority at all, let alone one of 174 MPs. This is a seismic moment for this Prime Minister because we've seen it before. We've seen moments when Theresa May lost votes as Prime Minister. It put a short time on her time as Prime Minister. We saw under Boris Johnson in late 2021 and early 2022 the U-turns, the continual U-turns, the threats of backbench rebellions on policy, and the humiliation for various ministers being sent out on the morning media round to defend a policy when that policy was then changed by that very afternoon. MPs don't like being humiliated like that, and there will have been Labour MPs over the course of the last 5 or 6 months who first had to defend over the course of the winter fuel payment cuts to pensioners. They'll have had to write letters defending that policy choice, only for the U-turn to happen later on. They'll have also had to defend the rhetoric of the Prime Minister over his Islands of Strangers speech, only for that to later be withdrawn by the Prime Minister himself. They'll have had to defend the Prime Minister's position of not having a grooming gang inquiry, saying that it was utterly unnecessary, only for then the government to commission a grooming gang inquiry. On issue after issue after issue, you will have had this eking of issue between the backbench MPs and the government. They've been forced to say one thing and then the policy has changed. That breeds bad blood, that breeds resentment, and crucially, that breeds a lack of authority. Why go along with what the Prime Minister is going to say next week when he might only change his mind the week after. That saps the authority from a government. That makes it incredibly hard to govern. And as Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said this week, if the government cannot even reduce the speed at which the benefits bill is growing, let's not forget it's due to balloon by £13 billion by 2030. The government wanted to save £5 billion of that ballooning, so it would still be increasing by £8 billion. Well, if the government can't even slow the rate of increase as it wanted to, how on earth is it going to make any other spending cuts at all? Indeed, this is going to put the government on a terrible collision course, where it can't find the savings, whether it's from pensioners or the disabled or wherever else they want to find those savings. If they can't make those choices, if they can't make those fiscal decisions, well then how do they govern? They've only got one choice to raise more money if they can't cut spending, and that's to raise your tax. And how popular would a Prime Minister be for raising more tax? The Labour Party's already lost 20 points in the polls from the moment it was just before it was elected to now. I mean, it is the most extraordinary decline in popularity for a government. I mean, the first 11 months of this government have no doubt been the fastest decline in authority and popularity of any newly elected government in modern history. So what happens then? Does the plotting begin to remove Keir Starmer, to reorganise his number 10 team, potentially to force a leadership election? There's always been rumours around Angela Rayner wanting the job. Some people speculate Ed Miliband could take on that role. Others point to the Health Secretary Wes Streeting. Are the sharks really circling? Or are the journalists just getting a little bit excited? Well, whatever happens, it's clear that this is uncharted territory. This is an almost uniquely unpopular government this short into after a general election, this short amount of time after that vote. And it's clear that the Prime Minister has lost a huge amount of authority with his backbenchers. That is saving up a lot of trouble in the weeks and months to come. Well, it's only a few weeks now until the summer recess. MPs will go back to their constituencies, some will go on holiday, and then conference season will begin in September and October. Party conference season, where we'll be able to see these parties come together. We'll be able to gauge the mood of them as they attempt to rally themselves ahead of very significant elections in 2026. But the question will be, how stable can this government be? Can it stabilise itself? Or has the cascading battery of U-turns only just begun? Well, we'll keep a close eye on it here at GB News. So remember to click that subscribe button, stay up to date, and we'll keep you informed as to whether or not this government can last the summer.